Okay, so this is the intro for the CBL project. I just want to go over the work we did and what we did with our 15 hours. So the first day, there was 2 7-hour days, or 2 7.5-hour days, sorry. The first day we were in Brockton. We visited the shelter run by Father Bills and got food from there to deliver with the outreach team, who was actually only one person. Josh, who was actually in our podcast later on. We delivered food and water and other necessities out to the homeless people in Brockton for the first day. And the second day we were in Quincy doing the exact same thing with Josh again. Just for a little preface, enjoy the podcast. This is the community service podcast. We're here in Mainspring, Father Bills, with my co-host John Summers and our two guests.
I'm Josh Brown. I'm the outreach manager at Father Bills in Mainspring.
And I'm April Connolly. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Father Bills in Mainspring.
And today we'll be talking about just the sort of gist of Father Bills, what they do here, their statement, or what was it called again?
The mission
statement. And yeah, just go over our experience.
So we want to start off by asking you guys, what's the history of the organization here?
So Father Bill McCarthy, who's the founder of Father Bill's Place, he started Father Bill's in a church basement when he started to see a need for people to be brought indoors. And so St. John's Church was the church he was the priest at. And so back in the early 80s, he started to see people needing support. So he opened up a sort of nightly shelter at St. John's. And at the same time in Brockton, there was a real need in the early 80s, same time. And the Jack Conway from Conway Real Estate actually assisted with purchasing the building located at 54 North Main Street, known as Mainspring House. And so at the time when they purchased Mainspring and started Mainspring Coalition for the Homeless, Father Bill, coordinated with the Quincy Interfaith Sheltering Coalition to establish Father Bill's Place, which was where we are right now, and that's
so this is the original spot.
This is the original location once he moved out of St. John's Church. The city of Quincy leased this building and still leases it to Father Bill's in Mainspring for the to accommodate the nightly emergency shelter needs. So over about 30 years, the two organizations just provided shelter. Mainspring Coalition served a lot of families experiencing homelessness in addition to individuals, and Father Bill's really started to pioneer the housing first model, so started to provide people experiencing homelessness with housing opportunities. Right. And what we saw in the early 2000s was that reduced the number of chronically homeless individuals by about 80% in Quincy. So we knew then, we started to learn that housing was really the answer to homelessness. So the two organizations, seeing that we were regional, one covered Plymouth County, one covered Norfolk County, decided to merge and really create a bigger voice in Southern Mass for the homeless, and became Father Bill's in Mainspring. So gotcha. The boards merged, and the two groups, what Father Bill's kind of brought to Brockton was a housing response to homelessness, and what Mainspring brought to Father Bill's was an awareness of the problem around family homelessness. And so between the two entities, really being able to address the full continuum of homelessness. And so we started in 2008 as a merged entity, about a $7 million operating budget. And today we have about a $35 million operating budget across the organization, which just demonstrates for us, and to quadruple in size in just about 13, 14 years is a lot of really fast growth. And so we're still trying to catch up, but that's kind of where we came from. Sort of our roots were very much in the faith community, and with the private sector investing in serving the population.
Right. Does the sort of mission statement still revolve as heavily around faith today, or is it more?
That's a great question. I would say that we're a non-secular organization, so we're not a religious organization despite our religious roots.
And name, yeah.
And and our name. I think that's often sort of something that people don't know about us, is that we're actually non-secular. But I would say our mission really is grounded in an approach that is non-judgmental and really believes that people, no matter how many chances they need,
right,
everybody deserves to have a home. So regardless of your religious faith, your identity, who you are, where you come from, Father Bill's and Mainspring really approaches everyone like it's the first time you're asking for help,
right,
and are willing to provide that. I don't know if you want to add anything, Josh.
No, and it's funny because you hear a lot of people ask me, because I'm new to the role, right? People ask me that similar question all the time, like,
right,
is it still a Catholic-based homeless shelter? I said, well, it's not, but in my role as the outreach manager, I spend a lot of time connecting with a lot of local churches, because there's a lot of people that, are in the church community that want to do this type of work on a volunteer basis, or, but there's Catholic churches in the Brockton and Quincy area who I talk to regularly. There's a couple, other Christian denominations, but there's actually a mosque in, there's a mosque in Stoughton, and there is a temple in Sharon that I've also reached out, and they're doing the same thing. So it's not, even though Father Bills was Catholic, gotcha, there's multiple.
Regardless,
it doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
So there's a big partnership with local churches that is great. It's a great resource for us, and people want to be connected.
Imagine.
And obviously, I love sharing and teaching about outreach anyway. So it's been a great tool.
100%.
Oh, so our next question is who makes decisions and how?
Do you want to start, Josh?
So it can go either way, right? So I like to think every day, like this. So big company decisions, like obviously you're gonna have like your board, and you're gonna have your directors and your chief operating whatever department they're chief operating of, right? But on an everyday basis, I really feel like, depending on the decision, it comes all the way down to like the support person and caseworker. You don't want to call them like the lowest person on the totem pole, but on a structural chart, like they're going to be, right? But they have to make decisions every day. So every situation every circumstance is so different. Like your homeless experience is going to be very different than your homeless experience, right? And you're going to come in with a different background. One of you may have like a history of domestic violence, and one of you may just have substance abuse, and one of you may just had really bad luck with, you lost a couple jobs and you're behind on your mortgage and now you're out, right? So the backgrounds and the circumstances are always different. So the way that the caseworker approaches your particular case is going to change. And they're all empowered to make the correct decision. That's the best that they can to help you first. And then above, our support staff and our caseworkers, the management level, so like me, would fit that role, and I would make, some decisions on the personnel. Like how the department reports, how the department is organized, how they kind of go about their systematic, like, day-to-day work schedule. And then above me, we have our directors, and they do the same thing, but on a much more like a macro level, right? They're running like departments. And then you have like your normal business model, you have your chief operating officer of whatever, finance and operations and all those other things. And then eventually there's a board, right? Who's, and then at the end of the day, like the board, then you have public opinion, who also gives input, and they let you know loud and clear whether or not they think the organization is doing a great job, and it's a big giant circle. Organizationally, it runs like a corporate business. You have your board all the way down, but really day to day, it's a big circle. Everyone's empowered to make decisions, and we just kind of have their chain of command and authority, if you will.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Have you ever had like public backlash from like a decision made?
So I've never had it. I don't know. I am in the great position where my job requires me, as you guys saw last week, I go out and I'm doing a lot of face-to-face on the street work. So I call it like the glorious job, right? I get to be the one that goes out and is like, oh, look at him. Like he's doing, look at him talking to that guy on the sidewalk. He's so brave. Like what a good guy he is.
Right.
So I get the really cool job of,
He's the
you
hero.
know, I'm going out, I'm meeting people, I'm the face of the organization. Oh, look at him doing good work. So that's cool. But you have other situations, like we have rules and regulations to get to follow, right? So, you know, people that may come into the shelter, you know, they have trouble following the rules, and then word gets out that, oh, they kicked me out, right? That's not the whole story, but that's a story that gets told. So you get some weird backlash from that, right?
It all changes going through everyone.
Right, and then, you know, we, Father Bills in Mainspring has our housing first philosophy, right? But not everyone subscribes to the theory that housing first is correct, and they let you know very quickly, like, why are you giving this substance abuser a house? He's just going to ruin it. Like he's wasting your funds, he's wasting your money. So while I don't specifically deal with that in my job, I've heard it lots of times. I heard it long before I worked for the organization, right? But I believe it, so I'm here. You know,
No, yeah.
But I've certainly heard it, and I'm sure you hear it far more than I do.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's organizations, nonprofits that serve, you know, children and families, and a lot of nonprofits have a tough go of it publicly. But when you work in homelessness, it's just because it has such an impact on the community. It's a tough mission. It's a very tough mission. And like Josh said, there's all sorts of opinions about what the right thing to do, what should be done, what shouldn't be done for people who need our help. And so there's always a balance of understanding the perspective of the community and some of the stereotypes and stigmas that they believe for any number of reasons. Maybe that's what they've been told, maybe that's what they've been exposed to. And so we spend a lot of time trying to educate the community about what homelessness really is and who actually experiences homelessness, because it's oftentimes not who they think.
Right.
And really to help people understand that even from a business point of view, housing is a better solution than shelters, which frankly cost more, are less humane, are not going to help someone move on from homelessness. That housing really is the thing that solves homelessness, no matter why someone became homeless. People most often think that they became homeless because of something wrong with them, when the number one reason people experience homelessness is financial, because you frankly just need to earn a lot of money to afford housing.
Especially in Massachusetts.
Aside from California, it's the most expensive state to live in this country.
We're introducing another guest here. We have
I'm Steph Watson, the operations manager for the Northern region.
right. And what were we
So
what
we were
topic
just
were we
talking
on?
about. Josh and I were talking about the sort of external view of of our work and sort of how decisions are made and what considerations we have to have when we're making different decisions. And so we were talking a little bit about the public perception of homelessness and the work we do, and so how it can sometimes have a negative perception. So we're spending a lot of time educating people about what the real picture of homelessness looks like. That's where we
Also like housing versus shelters.
Yeah, I would say our population at both shelters is what we would call situational homelessness, which can happen to any of us. So, car breaks down, can't make it to work, lose the job. We have a large population of elders here that make SSI. Right. They can't afford housing. It's really not what people picture it as, and even the small subset of our folks that do struggle with substance abuse disorder and mental health challenges, it's through experienced trauma. We serve a lot of veterans. We serve young adults. It's not what people think. And to April's point, it's very frustrating to hear that people think it's someone on the side of the road yelling at people and doesn't care about society or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all.
No, these are people
Regular
too.
working folks. Yeah, regular working folks. Most of our guests work. It's just rent is extremely expensive, and through their trauma and experience, they would prefer to live independently, and that's their right. And it's very expensive and hard to make that happen for yourself. In the regular, quote unquote, world, I have 2 roommates.
Yeah.
I work a manager position. It's just the reality of our society. So we just want to make sure that folks get to decide what housing means to them and what their goals are, and we can help them see the realistics of that, if it's really as attainable as we'd like it to be for them, or do whatever we can to help them really reach their own goals.
Speaking of goals, so how successful have you guys been in this company since it started?
I think we're super successful.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
So it's a question
you know
about
the stats.
about the agency's success or the success of the people who work here, or both.
Probably
We could do both.
Both,
Honestly.
yeah.
I mean, I can say from an organization's perspective, success is an interesting word. We consider ourselves successful if we're able to house more people. And I'd say that we've been pretty successful insofar as, we started out primarily a shelter, and now we house more people on any night than we provide emergency shelter. And so for us, that's the goal. And as long as we keep growing housing and theoretically reducing how many people need to be in a shelter bed tonight, that's success for us. I think our organization's unique insofar as we don't do everything well, but we know what we do well. So we do housing and shelter really well, and we look to partner with people who do other stuff well. So mental health work or substance use work, we want to bring that to the people we serve. But we know that might not be our wheelhouse. A lot of organizations try to sort of grow everything. And for us, we don't want to grow everything, and we certainly don't want to grow shelter. We want to grow housing, and we do housing for all populations really well. And so we'll always be hopefully adding to that. Be interested more to hear what Josh and Steph sort of view as success here.
So success for me as the outreach manager, right? So the population that I'm working with is generally very uninterested in emergency shelter. The population that I would call my clients, for one reason or another, do not want to come into Mainspring House or Father Bill's place. They either want to be independently. There's some gentleman you met, when we were out the other day. He prefers to be outside because he likes to be able to come and go when he pleases.
Right. Makes sense.
So that's some people have PTSD being in a shelter with a lot of other people where there's a lot of chaos sometimes, right? Especially in the dorm area, is a trigger for them, and it's not a mentally healthy place for them to come. And then you do have the reality that substance abuse is a real thing, and as you guys found out last week, not everyone that's homeless suffers from substance abuse. There's a lot of it, but there are a lot of people that are also in recovery and coming into a low barrier type shelter like this, where you don't necessarily have to come in not under the influence. Like, you have to come in clean. You can come in under the influence here, and there's drugs outside, especially in Brockton. Like, you saw the park right next to the shelter. It's a very highly trafficked area for everybody, right? So that's a trigger for a lot of people. If you're trying to stay clean and you're trying to remain sober or striving to become sober, like, that's a hard place to do it.
Yeah.
So some people prefer to stay away, and then the last group, really the big bucket, if you will, is that some people are just plain old scared. They don't want to come in to where there's a lot of people. They have previous history with domestic violence or trafficking or gang involvement, right? And that's a scary place to be because there's a lot of eyes coming in and out, and word gets through. So my clients aren't necessarily looking to come into shelter for those reasons. So success for me, is if I can get them, diverted into an apartment somewhere. So it's, I've had people where we've been able to help, put up their first month's rent and get them in a place. They have means to pay their rent. They just don't have the means to get into the front door because it's expensive. First, last, security and all that, right? Moving costs, it's a big deal. So success for me is being able to, provide that and get those resources out. Another successful part for me, really, is the education piece. I know that's not like, it's not technically in my job description to be the educator, but there is a lot of stigma in Massachusetts about like what homelessness actually means. Like in the city of Brockton, you drive by Perkins Park next to the shelter, so you see that church, you saw it.
Yeah.
We
Like
were
the
there,
steps,
yeah.
there's a lot of drug dealing, there's a lot of people on the front steps. And in the park, those aren't even our guests a lot of the time.
Right.
That's part of the problem. They're my clients, a lot of them, because they don't want to come in, but a lot of them don't even want to engage. That speaks more to the drug trafficking issues in the state than it does the homelessness of the state. A lot of them have places to reside. That's just where they come and get. But you know, the people only see that crowd. You know what I mean, that's their, so that becomes their perception. They're next to the shelter, so they must be homeless, and they must be part of the foot traffic and rabble rousers, if you will, of the downtown area, and that's not. So I get to educate people on what that actually looks like, and I love it.
Speaking on education, I feel like there's just really not enough of it. Like, for me at least, I had never seen so many homeless people in one place, you know?
Sure.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
It was an eye-opener for sure.
That's another barrier when you talk about different cities not wanting shelters.
Right.
The reality is folks experiencing homelessness exist whether or not you have a shelter for them. I know we partner with Plymouth, and there's a whole task force ending homelessness where the city of Plymouth, which is ironic to me because it's our first city in America, right?
Yeah.
America's all these support systems, opportunities, but they largely boycotted a shelter. So instead it's run by the Plymouth Task Force, all volunteers, and partnering with local churches. So it's unfortunate. People think if there isn't like a actual center, people won't exist, but they do exist. And what
No,
the difference
sure.
is they are not sheltered, and that's.
I think a
that's
lot of
problem.
people just want to keep their head in the sand and avoid the issue, but
I think for success for me in this role, so my role is I supervise the operations of the shelter. My goal is to make sure each guest feels safe, like they're being respected and being treated with dignity. That can be hard to measure when you're
Right.
working with folks that are really struggling with different barriers. But to me, if I or my team can make someone feel more confident or smile or laugh or just feel a little bit more at ease.
human.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
being in shelter itself is its own type of trauma. You know, we talk about folks already having experienced the trauma, but just being here every day, you're with different personalities, different folks experiencing different circumstances that led them to be where they are right now. And it's just reminding them to focus on themselves, work on their goals, and we love to see them go to housing. It can be bittersweet, honestly, because you grow close to these folks and then they get housed and you're super happy for them, but you miss them. They matter and they're important. And one of, certainly when we talk about human beings, unfortunately, every once in a while someone passes away, and that is a hard hit for the entire community. I think what folks don't realize is there is a huge community of folks within shelter where they can disagree and get grumpy with each other, much like how families can be. They're also very supportive of each other. They care about each other,
Right.
and they love each other. And, we care about them and they matter. So I think success for me is making sure people know they matter and trying to help keep them on their track. And if they have a setback, which can happen with, due to COVID, different things have been delayed. Now, one frustrating thing is to get IDs, you have to mail in a copy of your actual birth certificate or your actual Social Security card, and then wait on that to get back to you. The process can be very hard to navigate, and we have dedicated case managers working really hard with the guests. But it's a slow process sometimes, and it's just keeping them on track, or it's taking too long to get the apartment inspected, so then the landlord says, never mind, because I can go with someone else that doesn't need an inspection, and they have to start all over again. So it's those ups and downs of thinking they're almost at the cusp of exiting, and then their stay is extended. So it's just keeping them on track.
It's a journey.
Yeah, so that's success to me, for sure.
Are there any sociological concepts or theories that this organization works by?
We work with the housing first philosophy. So that philosophy is you take the folks with the most vulnerability, the most barriers to housing, house them first and wraparound services to keep them housed, and it's super successful. Didn't it eliminate homelessness in Sweden or some country? Was it Sweden?
I'm not sure, but it's certainly been tested, and it's shown to dramatically reduce the incidence of homelessness or eliminate it altogether. And really what Josh and Steph were talking about is the housing first, harm reduction. I'm sorry. The philosophy of it, right? It all starts, it's not, we frame it around housing, but what Josh is talking about, or Steph, it's about staying with people from the start. That you're going to refuse our services. We're not going to refuse you. We're all about screening in no matter where someone is along their own path. And we're not about telling people what to do. And it's not about our value system being imposed on people. It's about, we're reading a map. So I often will think of it like driving. Like you were in the car with me, Colin, sitting in the passenger seat. And if I needed directions, I'd say, hey, can you look up how we get here? Mm-hmm. And so you'd help guide me, but you're not going to tell me what to do, right? You're not going to tell me what I should be doing, or hopefully don't tell me how I should be driving. Not a very good driver. I probably use that feedback, but we're navigators, and we're brokers, and we're here to support someone else in achieving what their goals are, and letting them know, like Steph said, that they can get there, that it's not even the bump, which for them is failure. For them, they're accustomed to just, okay, forget it. It's over. We're not I don't have a chance now. And for us to bring that sort of forgiveness of the bump, we have to just forgive the bump, move forward, keep going. So I don't know how that translates to a sociological concept, but it is about meeting people where they are and meeting them there without any sort of presuppositions about who they should be, and accepting who they are.
And what was the mission statement of Father Bill's?
Oh boy. So the mission of Father Bill's in Mainspring is, and I would love for you to pull it off the website, is to provide emergency and permanent housing with supports, as well as workforce development and employment support for individuals and families experiencing homelessness in southern Massachusetts. Now Steph's going to read it off the website.
That was very close.
And we're going to see how I did.
That's very close.
I don't want to waste your podcast time with them.
Oh, no big deal.
As soon as it
It's long.
It's diversity inclusion, sorry. That's not the statement.
We can keep going and then come back to it once
Yeah,
Steph's
I'll
done.
find
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
Sorry.
Honestly, we might want to show you guys some pictures from our experience and just go through them. I don't know if that's not worth the time, but we just really had an amazing experience.
Sure.
And want to talk about it here, and I think that's an easy way to just kind of run through what we saw. But
go for it. Go for it.
Let's see what I got here.
And while you're pulling that up, Colin, the mission is to end and prevent homelessness in southern Massachusetts with programs that provide emergency and permanent housing and help people obtain skills, jobs, housing, and services. We help people who are struggling with homelessness or are at risk of homelessness achieve self-sufficiency.
So you were right on the dot.
It was close. It was
They
close.
should put you in charge of some things.
Someday, Josh. Here's hoping.
You'll get there. All right, you'll get there.
So the first day we saw these portraits of the people's stories. I took a few pictures of some of them. They were really interesting, especially the people who've had it so hard at such a young age. It was really eye-opening to see.
Right.
Just how good a lot of us have it. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It was
And these
Craziest
are
thing.
pictures, Josh and Steph, the portraits that were originally at Father Bill's place. They were
Awesome.
taken in the early
Right.
90s of guests from the shelter.
And then in the same spot we saw
Yep.
this collage of all the homes you guys have built, and the shovel, I would assume, was probably used for one scoop of dirt every place, maybe. I don't know. But and then we went on a tour, sort of, with Josh.
And which spot is this?
Yeah, that was amazing.
I'm not really sure
Oh,
which
yeah,
one
yeah.
that
Train
one was.
tracks.
I'd be more interested to hear. I know this is your podcast, so
Yeah, yeah.
don't let me take over. Right?
No,
But
take over, by all
I'd be
means.
more interested to hear what
Yeah.
your perception of sites like this were. I have
Oh,
my
I've never
perception.
seen anything like that in
I have
my life.
my perception
I've
of how
never
it
seen
came
that.
across to you two, just based on your faces. And,
Oh, really?
The
Yeah.
way you spoke about it after and the questions you asked. I
Yeah.
kind of was formulating this is what they came into it with, and this is kind of how
Right.
their perception's changing. But I would love to hear how a spot like this, what you thought a homeless an encampment would look like going into it, and how it actually differed in reality.
And maybe
So-
you guys could describe
Yeah.
the picture for the listener.
Yeah, for sure. This is a fenced-in area. The fence is ripped. There's graffiti pretty much everywhere. And there's a lot of trash, which I really didn't expect going into it. There's so much just waste that people leave behind.
Yeah, a
That,
lot of glass too.
Needs to be cleaned up. A lot of glass. A lot of needles, especially in the train track area that we went to. There were tents, and then this was the spot you were like checking to see if someone was home.
So this particular one that you have up right now with the pallets, that's kind of wedged in between the back of the building and the train tracks.
Right.
That's someone's actual house. They live there.
Yeah, and you were saying it's a couple people, right?
There was 3 people. It's now, I'm sorry, it was 4. Now it's just 2.
Gotcha.
2 of them have been successfully housed for the last 2 months. We were
That's
able to get
amazing.
them into an apartment. But there's a couple that actively lives in that site, for lack of
Yeah.
a better term. Yeah.
My reaction to this, honestly, it reminded me of going out into the woods when I was a kid and building
Okay.
stuff like a little
Yeah,
fort,
that's what I was
you
gonna
know.
say. It's like a little camping trip.
And it's shocking to see these living conditions.
Yeah, you opt to go camping when it's warm out,
Yeah.
Yeah,
usually in a safe
Yeah.
campground.
not with
Ripped
glass
out
laying
campground,
everywhere.
yeah.
No needles.
And
Yeah.
certainly not in the cold or
100%.
rain or snow.
Yeah.
And that's their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what opened up my eyes when thinking about the weather and how they're
Oh, yeah.
outside for.
Like, what do they do in the winter?
Same thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's crazy.
it's insane. to
And
me.
you see the trash and the needles, because another barrier is kind of that mentality of, if we don't have a shelter, then there won't be folks experiencing homelessness. It's also, if we
Right.
don't provide safe needle exchange or trash bins
Or
available,
reusable.
we are not encouraging this. It's backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually have a question for you guys. So, the other day I was reading something and it was talking about making reusable needles. What do you guys feel about that?
By reusable, do you mean they take the syringe off and then they put another syringe on, or
Like, I didn't see the details of it, but it was like reusable needles for users, so there's not as many diseases that's being spread
So they're clean, it's clean.
Yeah.
because you're not going to really be able to stop them.
Right. Yeah, we support harm reduction. We support folks. If folks decide to come to stay with us, they're welcome to lock up their clean syringes so that they have an ability to safely use.
Yeah.
In the past, our outreach case manager has helped folks find a safe place to be and to use, just in a way to provide that harm reduction and not encouraging them to. But the reality is, unfortunately, they're not doing well, and it's really hard to come down off of those drugs. It's the worst you've ever felt, physically and emotionally, and the only thing that makes you feel better is the drug. So if you're already stuck in that loop and you feel like no one cares about you, it can be really hard for them to become sober. So yeah, we try to support whatever that looks like for them. And with harm reduction, it's, today maybe you didn't use, but you use the next day. Great job for not using the day before. Or today you drank 10 beers instead of 16. That's great. Just
Right.
trying to support them with whatever their goal is, like April said, it's not just a housing goal, it's their life goals. Like, how can they feel better and more confident about themselves as individual people?
Yeah, and April said before, right, we're talking about, we don't want to be great at everything. We can't be a catch-all for all human service-related issues, right?
Yeah, it's too much.
So we focus on housing. Housing's our thing. But
Right.
we've developed great partnerships in Quincy, specifically, right? We'll do a lot of outreach with a harm reduction agency called Manit. We'll go out with them, and we go out together, and the outreach worker from Father Bill's will act as the agent for housing, right? We have housing resources, we have shelter resources. I always go out. You've seen my giant bag: food, water, socks, hygiene, things like that. But the group, the agency we go out with, Manit in Quincy, or Calm Health, or Stairway to Recovery in Brockton, or COPE. There's actually a lot of agencies in Brockton, I think. We go out together, and their role is harm reduction. Like, you're actively using. Do you have the needles you need to use? Do you know where you can find other places to get the needles so you're safe? So you don't contract one of those diseases that come with reusing a needle. You know what I mean? And the education, like we talked about with homelessness, it's the same. They're doing the same thing, but on a medical safe using level, because we'd rather have you use safely than pass away or contract an illness from not using. Because either way you're using, but if the outcome can be you're healthier, then that's the avenue we're going to take.
Definitely.
So we're supporting the best version of you we can support. So that's why we partner with all of those other agencies. Because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. Like, if you have a cold, I can't do anything for you. So I bring someone along who has some skills in an area that I can't provide.
And I think one of the things I would add is, you asked John about, like, changes. What changes have we made? And I think that over time, we've recognized the importance of not encouraging people to do things that aren't good for them, but at the same time, understanding it's not our decision to make. People are going to decide the path they take. Just like all of us in this room, right? We choose our path. We choose who we want to be. We choose the direction we go. And for us, it's not about judgment. It's not about the shoulds. And it's taken us there's been iterations of that.
Sure.
I told you, people weren't allowed to take their cell phones into the shelter in the last 5 years, and now they can. There are a lot of shelters across the Commonwealth that have zero tolerance for being under the influence. You can't come in if you've been drinking, if you've used. And for Father Bill's and Mainspring, that kind of sociological concept, right? We're a basic needs emergency shelter. This is not about what people should be doing with their lives when you need a shelter bed or you need a home.
Right.
It's about kind of survival, and it's about saving lives. And when you start at that level, I honestly, it's not. I don't care where you come from or what you've done today. If you need a place to stay tonight to be alive, that's what we're going to start from. We'll start there. We try to move in a direction and try to encourage people to make healthy choices and all of that. It's not to say that we don't encourage or reinforce behavior that is going to hurt someone, but we understand that we're not going to, you don't make a 180 turn in your life overnight.
Right.
And,
Takes time.
you need to live through the night in order to make the change. So that's what we're here to do, at least as a starting point.
I feel like, especially in the States, harm reduction is really controversial. Like, I feel like the majority of people would rather not spend government funding on drugs, Like, how does that make any sense? But in places in Europe, like, they'll have harm reduction places that give free, heroin, whatever they need, and then they'll get their fix or whatever, and then they won't die, because it's safe needles.
Yeah.
They're not getting it off the street, and it's taking government funding, but it's less death,
Yeah.
And that's really comes from a point of view of progressive engagement, which is about, you need to, again, where Steph said it, you need to meet someone where they are, and Josh has said it in a variety of ways, right? We meet people where they are, and it's not about, here's some drugs, here's a clean needle, go off and do your, have at
No,
it.
they do
And
it in the places.
It's a safe use,
stay there.
supervised use. You know what you're putting in your body, and it's an opportunity for that worker to talk to that person about recovery, to engage with them about where they see their lives going. And you can't start with somebody if you're just taking everything away from them.
Right.
We know that doesn't work, but we still start. Our society starts from a very puritanical point of view, which is hard work, clean and sober, jump through hoops before you get the golden ticket of housing.
Right.
Which is not realistic for everybody.
Well, it's why a lot of people fail and don't get the housing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's why people end up at emergency shelters.
Yeah.
Because we've set expectations that are unreasonable.
Mm-hmm. But I guess I'll move on to a couple other pictures. You brought us to this site where you said a bunch of people were living in here.
Not anymore, but they had.
Yeah.
For a long time, there was a lot of people there. Yep.
The
That
house
was
was
really
like gonna
first
come
time.
down or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
How was that cleared out? Was it because it was unsafe, or did the
That
city...
one is, so it's, I'll describe it too. So you have this big, large building, right? And the building is missing all of its siding and shingles. You can see straight through it through the windows. And there's a little gap in between the next building next to it. Up until this past spring, that gap was a straight alleyway onto the train tracks. You could walk straight up and walk right onto the tracks, right? Back in the old tent city days of Brockton. This building is all boarded up where you would be able to climb in if you were on the ground.
Right. And this spot right here.
Yeah, exactly. So and then it's boarded up, so you can't get to the tracks. The city of Brockton has Quincy has one too. But I've had more engagement with the city of Brockton in my short time around here. They have a community outreach team of 2 lieutenants and a police sergeant, and their job is they spend most of their day doing what I do, but from a public safety police standpoint.
Right.
They'll go out, they'll check on buildings, they'll make sure that buildings like this that aren't necessarily safe for for me to go in, they have the capacity. They'll go in, they'll make sure they're cleaned out, they'll make sure that they're boarded up securely.
Right.
Because buildings like that are not safe to be in, but in times past, I've been out with other volunteer agencies, and you can hear people inside. I've seen faces like out from me from those higher floors, looking down to see who's coming into their space, right? As far as I know, there are no more floors inside that building for people to look down from. The building's a shell.
Wow.
Because it's so unsafe. That whole thing's supposed to be coming down within the next couple months.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that whole L shape of the building was a place to hide, because it was it's a scary looking building,
Abandoned,
right? So it's all
yeah.
banded up. So all the old barred windows are now secure plywood. All the glass has been removed, so people can't get hurt with broken glass and things like that. But and you saw even up in the little
Right.
alley, even though there's no through access anymore, you saw all the signs of alcohol and substance abuse.
Yeah. No, we did.
That was where we first saw a lot of needles.
Yep.
Definitely.
One thing I'll say, and I appreciate what Josh is saying about the public safety officers and the kind of the attempts made to engage with the population. There is another side of that, depending on the city's position on homelessness. What happened to that tent city prior to was that the city basically bulldozed people's homes who had been living there for years.
Yeah.
To move the problem, to Steph's point, right? Was like, well, if we just bulldoze their home, they won't be here anymore. And so they left very little time for us to work with people on moving out of the site. And they just went in and took everyone's stuff and trashed it. And when you have an administration, that's not the current administration in the city of Brockton, so I'll say that. They had the new administration has been much more engaging and worked with us in a very cooperative way. We have really good things to say about the city of Brockton, but in the past, there has been a less sympathetic viewpoint and a very reactionary approach with the homeless population. And what happened when they bulldozed Tent City, which was there for 20 years, was everyone scattered and went into much less safe environments because they weren't together. The community was broken up, and so the people that had been keeping each other safe were sort of disbanded.
Yeah.
And again, we weren't able to kind of work with them on doing that in a safe way.
And you guys saw the remnants. That was that big flat area of land. We kind of walked the old bridge that we walked over there.
Mm-hmm.
That was what that was. That was the remnants of. And how many sites did you see that were still being used? So it wasn't even an effective solution.
Yeah.
Because there's,
Yeah,
in the summertime, that's a pretty big hotspot still. It didn't solve anything except for wiping it out.
Mm-hmm. How many people lived at Tent City? Was it?
It varied, but our estimates were like anywhere from, and Josh probably knows better than me, at least currently, but it used to be like 20 to 40
Yeah, it was a lot.
was the range of
Wow.
people who were pretty consistent in staying in that location.
Wow.
And a lot of the people we met that gentleman kind of just hanging out in the park, right? And he had made reference to Tent City. He was a resident of Tent City, so
Which guy?
he was the one laying on the blanket with the young woman. They were by the river.
Yeah.
Oh, with the hatchet.
Yeah.
Yes, the one with the hatchet cleaning off the bottom of his foot. That was him.
Gotcha.
He was a resident of Tent City. So to the point, like, it didn't. There's still sites in Tent City,
Yeah.
or the old Tent City, and there's still residents living homeless in the city of Brockton who were residents there. So, problem not solved.
Clearly.
To the point.
We actually did visit Tent City. That was just a random picture of a
Just a
mattress.
random mattress
It's just
syndrome.
trash everywhere. They should really get people to clean it up.
I was surprised. Not I wasn't surprised. I was struck by how affected you two both really were about the condition of the river that kind of runs through Brockton and just the area in general.
Yeah.
Where it definitely becomes like forgotten land.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
just a wasteland.
it's
Really.
a lot of these sites where people are staying are you said it before, people like to be out of sight, out of mind. Like, I think
Right.
if you were to poll, random strangers on the street, almost all of them would tell you that they think that people should be able to live in a house, but a lot of them will tell you that they don't want to see it. You know what I mean? If they were being honest with you, they wouldn't want it in their backyard.
Yeah.
So it kind of becomes no man's land. No one really goes out there. It's not being used. It's whatever. But even the little nooks and crannies that are, high traffic using spots, like the very first spot I kind of showed you on the way to the day center, I was struck by how impacted you two were by just the condition of where people are staying.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's
No, it's crazy. And the environmental impacts.
yeah.
Ridiculous. But there's another picture of those catchers
those were all
where
the needles.
they collect
Yeah.
the
Yep.
needles.
The
You were
needles.
saying.
So this is in the old Tent City. There's a whole stretch of grass that just has all those black needle collection boxes all over the place. So I don't know how they got them and just dumped them out there, but it looks like somebody was trying to be a do-gooder and collect them, and then didn't know where to put them, so they just
Spread them out. and just
threw them out
yeah,
into the
well,
woods. Yeah.
Interesting.
I would say that's another thing too. Is while we were walking, I usually never have to worry about where I'm stepping.
But
I felt as if when we were out there, I was always being cautious of where I was
Definitely in a bit of danger.
stepping.
glad I beat that into you enough for you.
But
I think I might have some pictures too.
yeah.
Could be. Oh yeah, so here's a picture of the river where was it? What was his name that stayed?
Who's Bobby?
Bobby.
He does go by Bobby. Yeah.
Oh, that's not his actual name.
I never know.
Oh.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I never know. Yes, this is one of the first spots that I showed you guys. This is right when we first started.
Right.
But and you can kind of describe what you saw under that bridge. But that was the first encampment that either one of you I showed either one. The first real encampment that I showed you.
Just a lot of stuff.
It was seeing a lot of blankets like hanging down.
They were just dripping in the river, like no regard for
Yeah.
like anything. And there were fish in the water, which was
that was
crazy
pretty
to me,
interesting to see the fish. You said he's like caught them before.
Yeah, he
too.
catches them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, is seeing the river of how contaminated it was.
Yeah.
with
Oh
all-
yeah.
And him eating that is definitely not
No, not safe.
safe. Yeah.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, when we think about kind of our value system as a society, we can sit in this room and look at how that Bobby's living,
Right.
and I hope we can all reflect on, like, I don't think Bobby wants to live there.
Oh no. No way.
And I think the perception is that that's what people deserve. that people deserve what they have, and that, you know, Bobby doesn't deserve housing, or he doesn't deserve a shot at, you know, kind of living in a better environment. And, you know, when we see the squalor that people live in, the unsafe environment, the needles, kind of having to wake up and literally walk on eggshells when you get out of bed.
Right.
None of these people would want. None of them started out in college saying, I'm going to aim for the TRX railroad tracks.
Yeah.
That's
No
my
way,
life's
no.
goal.
Right.
And I think we lose the humanity of that. I think a lot of times people who haven't seen it, like you guys had the opportunity to see that life, assume that that's just how it worked out for them.
Yep.
And the reality is, they all started with a family somewhere. They all started with a home at some point, and things took apparently a lot of turns in their lives. But at some point, somebody stopped being in their lives and said, "You're not worth it. You don't deserve." And then, as people adapt, because that's what we do, you adapt to your surroundings. So the resiliency of the people who live outside is absolute. I am in awe of how these people have survived.
Right.
And we have a ton to learn from them, but at the end of the day, none of them opted for it.
You're right.
And they all deserve to get out of that environment.
Resilience
100%.
is the word I use almost any time I talk about
Yeah.
people who live outside. Resilience is definitely the word for them.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah, I would say that is probably the biggest eye opener for me. Is before we saw what it was like, we thought a homeless person was basically like what we would say is like a crackhead, but you see like their background, and it's like it's not where they want to be at all, and sometimes it's like how they were raised and brought into it.
You never know their backstories.
Sad.
I was actually really impressed by how much time and effort the two of you wanted to spend getting to know people's background stories when we met them. That was actually on one hand, it just shows a lot of maturity, right? It's but I've met professionals who work. They have clients who are experiencing homelessness, and they didn't have the same kind of level of care for the person that the two of you showed coming right out of the gate with no experience. So I thought that was I was really impressed by that. But to your point, right, you guys came out, and that first corner that we checked was literally just a pile of trash, and the two of you were like, "Oh, somebody lives here." I'm like, "No, like not everyone lives outside. It lives in a pile of trash."
Yeah.
But your perception was so. I don't use ignorant in a bad way, but you just didn't know, right?
Oh, I know.
So
I did.
having to show you, like, you know, those orange caps are needle caps. So for every orange cap, there is a corresponding uncapped needle somewhere, right?
And I feel like I've seen those before and never.
And you
Yeah,
never
too
know,
much
right?
about it,
So
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, I was. It was great having you two. I'm excited to go with you guys again today.
Of course.
But I thought you guys showed a lot of maturity, and I was really impressed with your empathy. From both of you, for people that you have no experience talking to or relating to. So
No, for sure.
your mom should be proud.
If it's okay, I just wanted to share a story that April reminded me of in terms of how Housing First works.
Right.
So we had this, he still lives in our housing. His name is Russell. He lived outside for a long time. So Russell used to sleep outside, be in those kind of encampments that you saw. Once he was housed at Jack's place, he, for a long time, struggled to stay at his apartment, which people would think is strange. Like,
Definitely.
why would he choose, quote-unquote, to stay outside?
I need to hold his apartment.
Yes, I know, exactly.
Please, back the keys.
I know, or like, he'd be like, I'm out of here. You're like, no, because to him, what April was saying, that framework of Russell felt that all he deserved was being outside, and that being outside was actually his safety because it's what he knew and what made sense to him. And it took a long time to get him to sleep in the apartment, and for a long time it was just on the floor. He would only sleep on the floor, and then he started sleeping in bed. He still goes out and he scraps, and he's a really remarkable person. He's very handy. He's super helpful. He'll fix things. He'll clean up. He cleans Jack's a lot. He cleans up areas in the city that you're talking about where you see lots of trash, and he works really hard. And it's just, that's an example of someone that just needed the time, and why Housing First works. Because Russell needed, we're not therapists, right? Besides April as a clinician, but otherwise, that's not our role. We're not giving therapy, but we're talking to Russell about, okay, it's like, what are your goals? How can we support you with this? What will make you feel like you can sleep in your bed tonight?
Just remind him that he's human.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And or you can leave for a bit, but come back.
Right.
So that's just a really wonderful example to see, and I know Josh's continuing to do that, which is great. Taking the folks right from the encampment into housing.
For sure.
And I think that's one of the most amazing things is even like making them feel like they belong too, and like leading them in the right direction is a great thing. And for you too, when you say that, you could be like the only one to talk. You could be like the only person they talk to.
I guarantee you there were people that you talked to last week, and that was the only conversation they had all week.
Makes a world of difference, though.
Yeah, people don't see them. They don't acknowledge them.
That's
they don't even
thing.
smile at them, which I find wild.
Yeah.
Because I guess there's that societal guilt that if you make eye contact, when that person just might want to say hello, doesn't mean they're going to ask you for something.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely noticed that too, is how they really lived, like, that's what the definition of, like, being an outsider really was like. And we saw that firsthand, which was definitely an eye-opener.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I can't help but take the shameless plug that we can't teach empathy, but we can recruit it. So I encourage everybody to consider yourselves. There's always an avenue professionally in this work that you can use those unteachable skills.
100%.
It doesn't come naturally to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else we got to touch on?
I have some more questions. How many people have overdoses, like, per week, would you guys say?
In shelter? Or...
Yeah.
That really varies. We did have 2 last week, which honestly, here at Father Bill's place, which honestly was not typical. Typically, last year we only had 2 for the year, so I think there has been some new... we're always concerned about... You were talking about how in Europe they provide what they know is heroin. A lot of what our folks are buying, they don't know what it is, and the dose is not what they think it is, or it's laced with another drug, so it causes them to react in a different way, and it's very concerning. So I feel like we've seen an uptick in the community of overdoses because of these mixtures. In terms of an actual shelter, the guests know that like we said, they don't have to be clean and sober, and they can come in high, certainly, and that's fine, but they can't use in the building itself, and they don't want to have a consequence around that for a safety reason. So they avoid it, but last week I would say was tricky, because I did have to Narcan someone in the building, and then we did Narcan someone on the bike rack. But they're okay. They're both okay, which is great. But, it's tough. I don't know what Josh's experience...
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because I spend a lot of my time outside. So, this past Friday, I haven't had to use Narcan since I started working here. I've used it before, but I haven't had to use it in the 3 months that I've been here. But Friday afternoon, I'm sitting in my office doing some paperwork, and my director is sitting in the chair across the hall from me, and we hear there's a church. That big church is next to my office there, right? Yeah. We hear someone yelling for help. And we had just come out of a Narcan training, that we jump up, and we know that people at that church heavily use opioids, right? So the 2 of us jump up and we run over there because someone's just yelling for help, and there's no one back there, but we can hear them. And, they ended up they were incredibly high, but they weren't. They hadn't overdosed, according to their friends. So we were kind of hanging out and watching them. I had 911 ready to go. Like, I was one number away from calling 911 just to make sure. But they were just being goofy in their own weird way. But it happens. I hear stories about it almost weekly, about so-and-so. And, last summer there was a gentleman that I was working with, and 4 of his friends overdosed in the same day.
Wow.
All from the same properly laced drug, right?
So you see it in waves. usually depending on and we'll hear about batches that are bad or, people that, so I think we've seen over the years, we've seen upticks in overdoses when the opioid kind of crisis happened. We certainly were seeing overdoses. I mean, I don't know, it was
a lot.
Multiple a week, that whether it was outside or in the building, and it's certainly gone down. And I don't know how much COVID has to do with that. People either not wanting to risk their stay or just fewer people that we're seeing in the shelter. But it comes in these waves.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
Depending
Absolutely.
on what batch is being dealt.
And definitely with that community aspect, a lot of folks look out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one misconception is folks who use generally do not use alone. They, to try to be safe as they can, they use with their friends watching. When you've seen folks on our property at Mainspring House that Josh pointed out on our guests, they're there because they know they're on camera and they're trying to be safe in case they do overdose. And we want them to be safe and we don't want that to happen to them, but it's really tough.
And if they do overdose and you guys use the Narcan, what's their reaction after? Do they?
So typically, what it does is it blocks the receptors of the brain from the high, and so it jolts them awake. So it immediately takes them off the high, and that can make them, like I was saying, when you are coming off the drug, it's the worst you've ever felt in terms of physically and emotionally. Some people vomit, some people start sweating and shaking. Typically, after you Narcan someone, you put them on their side. You might also have to administer CPR. This year at Mainspring House, staff members we saw this in the uptick of very, very cold nights where folks that typically wouldn't access came in because it was so cold. And they did have to several Narcan, and provide active CPR. Yeah. We had to do that last Friday with the person by the bike rack. But I've seen other folks where they're just groggy. So I think it really just depends on the level of drug they had in them and how many Narcan they need. So the person on Friday, he needed 6 Narcan to breathe again. Yeah, it was very scary, but he's okay, which is great. But when I was able to talk to him after, and he was mostly just groggy and upset because he knew we would have to issue a consequence because of certain safety issue. But I don't even like to say consequence because it's really not meant that way. It's just, this is a safety concern. You won't be able to spend the night right now, but let's keep providing case management. Let's keep working towards housing. Do you want detox? That's your choice. Do you want another shelter placement? That's your choice. Let's help you get there.
Definitely.
It's never, all right, now you should be outside. We never want someone outside.
Yeah.
So whether they are willing to accept those extra steps is their choice. We never have a condition of, all right, you've overdosed, so now you have to go to a detox. So we would never do that. It's always their choice. But yeah, it really, I don't know, in Josh's experience, it varies how with it they are when they're after their Narcan.
Right.
The only additional symptom I've ever seen is I had one person, he was very violent when we took him. He woke up and before he even said boo, he took a swing at the paramedic who had administered with it, which is a possibility. But anger and all, it's just another symptom of withdrawal.
That's the person. Yeah.
Right, because to him, probably because he had wanted that high and then immediately lost it, he probably got all kinds of emotions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't upset that we were able to kind of save his life, for lack of a better term. He was more upset that he wasted a day's worth of panhandling, and now the high's gone, and he's sick now.
Yeah.
His first reaction was he only had one arm to begin with, so for that visceral reaction to wake up and already get himself up and then turn around, it was a lot of effort to take a swing. He was very upset.
Mm.
That's wild.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I would just say thank you both for spending the time.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for setting all this up, April.
Yeah.
Thank you for
You're
the
welcome.
tours, and thank you for the office.
Yeah. And I'll give you a tour of here.
Oh, we already got the
Oh, you got a tour?
That's
I
why
would
I'm
love
not
it.
giving a better tour than I
Yes, that will definitely give her a better tour.
And I hope you enjoy the crazy cat
Yes,
display
birthdays.
here. That, I think scared me a little bit when I came into Steph's office the first time. I was like, "What's going on with the cats, man?"
Birthdays.
That's
Something fun.
That's awesome. Man.
But I think, John and Colin, for you guys, if there's ever things that your class would find helpful, any other, education that Josh or any part of the organization can provide, that's part of our job is to get out, and certainly Stonehill partners with us a lot, but we're happy to sort of support further kind of exposure.
Gotcha.
I said a big part of what I undertake, even though it's not in my job description, is the education piece. I think it's really important for people to understand what it actually looks like and how it actually happens. So.
For sure, because we didn't know what it looked like until we had a full day with you.
No idea.
And then I'm sleeping at night and I'm looking up above me and I'm realizing like how lucky I truly am, because there could be 60 other people around me while I'm trying to sleep.
What stuck out most to me too was like, when I had that day, I was like, "Oh, I've seen it all," and you were like, "Dude, this is only an afternoon."
That's
I have so much more to show you.
Yeah. Wild.
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been the Father Bill's community service podcast. Tuning out. All right, here we are for part 4 of the community service podcast, and we're going to be going over relating our experience to 4 sociologists / sociological theories or ideals.
We'll elaborate off what our experience was like as well.
Right. So the first sociologist we compared and took into account when thinking about our community service was Durkheim. He believed that societal norms had an impact on people's beliefs. Today, the majority of people would rather ignore the problem of homelessness rather than address it. Things like avoiding eye contact with homeless people, pretending they aren't real people with real stories, are some of the things that are ingrained to us when we're being raised. There's little sympathy for these people. And some people hold the belief that homeless people or drug addicts or both or homeless drug addicts don't deserve the help that is provided by institutions like Father Bill's. Instead, they'd rather film themselves giving back in like a TikTok video rather than making a difference out of the kindness of their own heart.
Yeah. And even that relates to when we interviewed Yago and Ethan.
Yeah.
That when we asked them if they made eye contact.
No.
And they never did.
Wouldn't even roll down the window.
Yeah.
It's a human being, you know? Crazy.
And they're it's almost like they're just outsiders.
Yeah. I mean, I can completely understand it, though, because I was raised the same way, you know?
And
Maybe to buy them food, but that's pretty much it.
100%. And honestly, the way they said they were raised, I think I was raised the same exact way, just like what you said, but I didn't notice it until after we had those 2 experiences.
Right.
Like that was
crazy.
That's what changed everything for me.
Actually having a conversation
with
someone who's gone through that changed everything, for sure.
You realize they're real people. They're not just that initial perspective of them just being what we say crackheads.
Yeah. No, more than that.
So for the second theory is the Marxism Theory, and Karl Marx focuses on the struggle between capitalists and working class. And Marx wrote that the power of relationships between capitalists and workers were inherently exploitative and would inevitably create class conflict. Involving homelessness, Marxism believed that homelessness and other social issues are a result of a person's shortcomings and personality flaws instead of the flaws of society itself. It's wrong because everyone is raised from the same place, or everyone is not raised from the same place. It's not like we all start at the same place and it's just because someone has a slip, they become homeless. It's
exactly. No. And that's what one of the guys we worked with in community outreach was saying. like, he mentioned that he has a sympathy for these people because he could have easily been in their position. He had told us he previously struggled with alcohol abuse and that he could have just seen himself in the same position. And that's why he can connect and really feel for these people.
Yeah, and the thing is like, some of these people, when they're raised, they might not have family support, and that's the reason why he got lucky enough, because he had his family be there to support him. But these guys, some of them are on their own, and it's like they have to fight their own battles on themselves. And without, I mean, in the end, it is all internally up to us, but it's really hard to make a change if there's not people to lead you in the right direction. And that's why the Father Bills is probably one of the best things that these guys can do for these people, because they don't really have people to lead them on the right path.
No, these are people with nobody left, you know?
Yeah. And
it's crazy.
And back on what we said, like, they don't belong, like, even when we were walking with them on the street, people would just, like, not look at them, drive by.
Invisible, man.
Yeah, it was like they were literally invisible. And showing them that they belong, and that's probably one of the best things you can do.
And that's why I think Brockton, or that's where I think Brockton differs from Quincy. With Quincy, it's much more spread out.
Right.
And everyone's sort of alone.
Yeah.
Whereas Brockton, they can kind of come together as a community.
Yeah.
Since it's such a highly dense. I mean, yes, that leads to more, like, drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Brockton had so much more drug abuse, but at least they have each other sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And that is like even the guy that we saw today that was buried in the woods. Like, he said he's lived there for 5 years without any problems.
He's got a couple of people probably living with him, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, there was a couple spots over there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And it's wild seeing that. So yeah, I don't really believe in the Marxism theory in that sense, because
no, not at all.
Everyone, like, everyone is raised differently, and it's your background and your culture, where you were raised, basically. Like, from power being passed down from family generation to generation, some people can be led in the right direction, because if they have money and a good school system, it kind of depends where you grow up on what predetermines who you can be sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't believe everyone is born equal.
No.
I mean, of course, I view everyone as equal, but some people are born with privileges relating to money. It's just that simple, you know?
Exactly.
Opportunities. Some people don't have the support others have.
Yeah.
The amount of chances, you know? Like, for someone with money and a family that cares about them, they can get taken out of that bad situation and put in, like, rehab with their money, you know?
Exactly.
Because rehab costs money.
Yeah.
And people who have nobody can't pay for rehab.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah.
Sad.
It really is.
So the next theory, you want to take that?
Functionalism?
Yeah.
Bet. So for functionalism, in social sciences theory based on a premise that all aspects of society, institutions, roles, norms, etc., serve a purpose that all indispensable for the long-term survival of the society, that all are indispensable, talk about the homeless making their houses and stuff. So the homeless people make their houses out of pretty much trash from what we've seen. And when they get displaced and forced out of their homes by the police, they'll leave all this trash around. And it's so much worse for society because the environment is being destroyed by all this human waste being left.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Seeing that Brockton River.
Oh yeah.
That was.
There's just plastic TVs in the water.
TVs, probably.
Yeah.
Fucking needles, for all we know.
100%. And the bridge home that we actually went to, where we dropped off, or went to visit Bobby, he wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Had all his stuff almost hanging off his little foundation under the bridge into the water. Like, he's probably dropped tons of stuff in there.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
100%. And just you could just see how murky and disgusting
It's gross.
the water was.
Yeah. But that's what results of poorly dealing with homelessness poorly.
Yeah. Agree. And for the last theory is by John Rousseau, and it's Rousseau believes first that advancements in arts and sciences have corrupted our virtue and morality. This ties into Durkheim's belief of societal norms impacting people's beliefs. People record themselves giving back just for a video in order for them to seem virtuous. But the thing is when people do the most good, they're not recording just for publicity and to make themselves out there to seem like they're such great people. They do it because they have a good heart. They're not doing it because they want all these followers and they want to, it's like a catfish almost.
They'd never invade their privacy because they actually care about the people.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing is, even with like social media today, I can count the amount of videos where these people.
I see them all the time.
And they're like, "Oh, I changed this homeless man's life."
And it's like a fucking goofy smile on a guy's face with a $100 bill in his hand.
Yeah.
Giving back to this
poor
poor guy who has to take the $100 bill because
mm-hmm.
he needs it.
Exactly, 100%. And they try to make themselves out like they did so good, but. The thing is, like, seeing what Father Bills and everyone created,
100%.
It's no publicity.
They don't have an Instagram running
or
something like that, dude.
It's because they have a good heart.
They're putting every ounce of their energy into giving back.
Yeah.
And supporting people who don't get any support.
Mm-hmm. Because they know those people belong, and that is by far the most important thing.
100%.
And even walking out in the heart of Brockton, where it's one of the murder capitals of the world, one of the highest.
It used to be, yeah.
It used to be, yeah.
And now it's one of the most crime-ridden cities.
And where this guy is walking in the streets of Brockton, in the heart of Brockton, and he's giving out to the homeless. And
everyone he sees, he's approaching. Hi, I'm Josh from Father Bill's. How can I help?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need anything? Food, socks, toiletries, water. He's got it all, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that also opened up my eyes. This is kind of aside from the subject, but like have you ever given money to like homeless people before?
Occasionally.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes when like seeing what they do, like not every homeless person is a drug addict, but
in the back of your mind you're like, is this the right decision?
Exactly.
You know?
And what makes sense is Father Bill is passing out like the necessities to actually like.
No, they're not handing out cash, man.
No, because if they hand out cash, they know where it's going to go.
Exactly.
And that also opened up my eyes.
They're providing shelter.
Yeah.
Food, every necessity, man.
Every necessity. And that's what opened up my eyes is like when I did give them the money, it's like, where did that money really go? Was it towards their next addiction?
More than likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But some people can't kick a drug addiction. It's not easy, man, you know?
Yeah.
But what are they going to do?
Mm-hmm. Let's go out. You want to talk about just our experience now?
I was going to do the last part of Rousseau.
Oh, okay.
So, another belief from Rousseau that ties into our experience was his belief that people are all good by nature and that the events of a person's life that corrupt him, it's the events of a person's life that corrupt him, which directly contradicts Marx's belief, which is that it's the decisions a person makes or there's something inherently wrong with them. And that's why they end up in these situations. When really, I completely agree with Rousseau. And that's definitely the belief that Father Bills holds. Believing that everyone is deserving of help.
100%.
You know? But yeah.
What was it like for you on the first day, like when we walked in and we saw the homeless shelter and all the
Surreal.
beds?
I was a little scared, man.
Me too.
Like, wow, are these people gonna like attack me?
Yeah,
You know?
I was thinking the same thing,
crazy.
dude. I was like, what? And
Because I felt so out of place, so disconnected with them.
yeah,
And throughout the 15 hours, it definitely shifted my mind,
yeah,
without a doubt.
that was honestly one of the most life-changing experiences.
I'll never
I've
look at
ever
a
had.
homeless person again the same,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, because my whole perspective before doing this community service was, oh, this is just a typical crackhead, and I honestly did. I
Exactly.
never looked at him in the eye.
You
I
gotta
never
realize,
looked at
like,
him in the eye.
Everyone has a story,
Yeah,
you know? And a lot of them don't get told, bro,
yeah,
you know?
100%.
Because no one asks.
Yeah, and I think what blew my mind the most was like seeing when we were talking to Will and G. Will and G are two homeless kids that are kind of near the same age as us.
Outside the Brockton
shelter.
shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking to them, and what I always used to think was that a crackhead, like a homeless person, was a crackhead. It was just every single homeless person was a drug addict, sleeping on the street. But
A lot of times it's not true.
it's not true, because we were talking to these two guys, and they were normal human beings, and they were perfectly good people. They had good hearts. They even looked out for us for a second.
Yeah.
They gave us
No,
a fair
100%.
warning. When we were at the shelter, we wanted to go explore and see a few parts of Brockton, which probably wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, I'll
But-
take the blame for that, man. That's
Yeah.
my idea.
Yeah, that's all right, man. It was cool.
It was cool. Interesting.
And we walk into the park, which is where supposedly, what is it, like where like everyone meets up?
The highest density of like drug deals
Yeah.
in the Brockton downtown area.
Mm-hmm. So we take a few steps into the park, and
Yeah.
we see one guy on one side of the fence and a guy on the other side of the fence, and we see them make this little hand exchange, and
Yep.
one of them looks back at us, and I was like, Colin, we gotta get out of
Yeah,
here, man.
I mean-
we gotta get out of here.
You know? And I was like, really, dude? What? Why?
Yeah.
You know? Like, I want to check out the park, dude.
Uh-huh.
But I'm glad I turned back, because I don't know. That was, imagine if they like thought we were
Cops or something.
not even cops, man, just like kids fucking around,
Yeah.
you know?
They come after us.
I don't want to be on a person like that's bad side,
Yeah.
because
Fuck
they
no.
literally kill people
Yeah.
with dealing drugs. But yeah.
But Will and G, the two kids we were talking to, they told us never to go right, and they were looking out for us. And usually, usually people just don't care.
No,
But they told us never do that again, because you can get caught lacking.
exactly.
And it was wild seeing the amount of people there too. Like, I didn't
It
realize
really was.
how big of a population.
It is incredibly dense with homeless people, and a lot of people never see that place, and it was just incredibly eye-opening,
Yeah.
because I'd never seen so many unfortunate situations.
Yeah, and even learning about the backside of, like, they can come in
Yeah,
at 4:30, but they have to be out by 7:30 in the morning. Or is
that
it?
sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, you can't come right back in after you do your drugs, you know?
Yeah.
Because these places are actually, you're allowed to come in under the influence, but they don't let you in immediately.
Mhm.
They're like time chunks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And even the guy, remember the guy that tried sneaking by us, and he was trying to walk up the stairs because they check everybody's bags?
Yep.
And they saw scissors, like, hanging out of his back
Yeah.
pocket, and they were like, oh, come back down here. And the things that they brought out, I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
holy shit, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what they had a knife, he
It
had like
was-
3 knives.
There's a bunch of snacks too, though.
Yeah,
you know?
he did have snacks
yeah,
there
yeah.
as well, but
Which I don't blame him.
I guess, I mean, that is true, though. If you're out in Brockton, you have to be You have to be safe.
Oh yeah. Comparing Brockton and Quincy, Quincy seemed much more, or much less diverse with the different races of the homeless people. It was mostly older white guys
And
who were
they were mainly alcoholics.
alcoholics,
Right?
yeah. And although we did see our fair share of needles
Yeah.
sadly, but
You know what blew my mind the most while we were out there?
yeah,
Was when we were talking to the guy, like the one in Brockton and the one today in Quincy.
yeah.
The guy in Brockton, we were walking up and we were like, "Do you need anything?" Blah blah blah, and he proceeds to smoke. He smoked crack right in front of us.
That was certainly something I'll never forget.
Yeah, that was insane.
Interesting, man.
Yeah. And even his story about living in where was it? It was like tent.
He lived in Tent City with his girlfriend, and he had said that she tried to kill him with a propane tank, and he lit it on fire, or she lit it on fire, sorry. And he just laughed it off, because he was like, I'm not stupid enough to get killed by that or something like that,
Yeah.
you know?
And even hearing Bobby's story when Bobby
Yeah.
he got jumped last year.
Stabbed.
And he got stabbed. Yeah.
Almost died.
And he almost died. That was wild.
Crazy stuff.
And just seeing those types of people, it completely opened up my eyes. It was
For real, man. No, I'll never forget it.
And the guy in the woods today, when we brought him his food,
Yeah.
and he's unraveling something.
He's holding a needle in his hand. I look over. Needle in his hand.
Yep.
It's like...
And they just don't care. It's
no,
like,
dude.
It's like they're...
It was like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, bro.
Yeah.
You know, I guess drug addicts don't have a schedule to their shit, but...
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's what blew my mind the most, is like, you would think they want to be like sly about it, but...
Yeah. Or do something.
They just don't give a fuck.
He doesn't give a shit, dude.
Yeah, he didn't care. He was like, this is my needle. We're like, basically, like, you're not going to do anything about it. You're giving me food.
Really interesting.
It was really interesting. What was it? You know what opened up my eyes the most was, like, seeing all, like, the... It kind of reminded me of, like, you know, when we were younger, you, like, play in the woods and you make your own forts and stuff?
Yes, definitely, man. It reminded me of, like, bringing a tarp out and, like, putting it on the leaned against sticks and stuff.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like they're actually living there.
Yeah, and to think that that's their home.
Exactly.
That was an eye-opener.
Yeah. And
even thinking that they live there like all year round in like the winter.
Oh yeah, no, he had the nicest setup we've seen, which had like a couple tents really off into the woods, like a 15-minute walk across a river.
Yeah.
He had been living there for 5 years, through 5 winters, and it's just with firewood. Like,
that setup was incredible.
Yeah, but like to live in a New England winter in that, you gotta be like shivering all day.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like what?
It doesn't make sense.
I know.
But thank God, because if Father Bills wasn't a thing and they didn't care, then
a
lot of people would be living outside.
Exactly.
Be more deaths too.
And that was actually the first time Josh had been there. He had never been there. That's why I was like kind of nervous of that guy, because it's like, is he gonna think we're people trying to steal his shit, trying to move him off his land, or not his land, but his spot?
Yeah, and he was definitely a little shook up when.
Oh yeah.
When we saw him too.
Well, everyone we came up to was like, "Dude, you scared the shit out of me."
Yeah.
And it's because police officers kick these people off, and trash is left behind.
Yeah. That is horrible for the environment too.
100%.
And really looking out in the nature and like where they all lived, like.
Yeah.
Especially walking around, being so careful of where your next step is gonna be, because
you don't think about that day to day. No.
That's what else opened up. Like that opened up my eyes also, because like, I mean, in my town, and like seeing the orange caps like signifies that there's a needle
I had no
nearby.
idea the orange caps were that. I've seen those.
No clue.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
I've seen those everywhere, like so
Yeah.
many places. Even my town in the Cape, like,
Yeah.
and you just like look at them and just
Oh, what's that? Plastic trash.
yeah, and you just have no
It's
thought behind
needles.
it.
Yeah.
Now you know it's an opioid user.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Even the Narcan that we found.
that was wild.
I didn't even know what Narcan was.
Yeah.
You know? Now I know it saves lives every day.
Yeah, that was wild.
Mm.
Did it ever like blow your mind sometimes when, I mean, I think what else like opened up my eyes or changed me was when I was going to sleep after like the first community service.
Yeah.
And I was like sitting in my bed and I look up and I had a roof over me. I looked to my right and I had a roommate and I was like, wow, like I didn't realize how lucky.
We haven't made.
Yeah. Like,
Literally.
no matter what, like sometimes you're like, oh, like when's my next dinner coming? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm hungry. But it's like these guys are struggling to
Dude.
find their next meal. Like,
You don't realize the privileges you had until you've seen people like that. You know?
yeah. Like we
It's
truly,
wild.
it's really that saying, like you really don't know how lucky you have it
Yeah.
until you see
Everything's
someone
about
else suffer.
perspective, man.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like, I went to bed that night happy. And not because, well, partly due to because I'd given back that day, but also because I realized how good I had it and how lucky I was.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Kind of inspires me now. Like whenever I see a homeless person
Yeah.
on the street, I'm definitely gonna not give them money. I will literally
Just have a
gladly-
conversation, man.
Yeah, just talk to them, make them feel
Treat
like
him
they
like
belong.
a human, dude.
Yeah,
you
not
know?
like the typical crackhead like people can
No.
consider them as.
What's up, bro? How are you doing, bro?
Yeah,
Simple as
Simple
that, man.
talk.
Simple as that.
and you don't even know, like a small act of kindness can change
Yeah.
one of those guys' whole entire day.
Sometimes these people are going like days without conversation,
Yeah,
you know? And if I had that, like, I'd be pretty sad, you know?
oh, I'd be so depressed if that.
It'd be boring.
That was my life. Your life is so boring
Dude.
without.
It's like you're an alien in a different planet.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
and they literally are outsiders, man.
Yeah.
Like
Nuts.
just even when we were walking with them. Remember the lady that walked with us when we were.
Yeah. I was like, wow, this is weird.
Yeah,
You know?
and
'Cause
it.
She did not, I don't know, something about it that just felt weird.
Yeah.
But
100%.
after, like, experiencing more interactions with these guys, like, I really just felt bad for her, you know?
And it is sad because when you do like, it's sad seeing them do those drugs because you know,
Oh, yeah.
at one point they were drug free
Normal
and normal,
People. Yeah.
and it was that one try to the next and
Yeah.
becoming
mean,
addicted.
A lot of people will just try once and then next thing they know, hooked,
Drug addict, yeah.
you know? But, anything else you want to touch on?
I'd say. No, I would just say this was probably one of the most eye-opening and life-changing experiences I've probably had in my life. Just really understanding
I completely agree.
people so much more.
Yeah.
And I think it's. And another thing is that I feel like since we know this, we should start educating people on what it's truly like.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know? And I want to thank April, Josh for sure, for allowing us to accompany him on his outreach mission. And, yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Signing off.
How long was that?